my wife is out of the country.
Oh, where's she?
Turkey,
Okay. Which part?
along the Mediterranean coast,
Okay.
southern part.
Quite a bit of, okay. I had good friends in Antalya who have been serving there, and yeah, that's part of my story. Missions is the background, so that's good. Awesome.
Just
Do
so
we
y'all
wanna
know about Doug, he was on staff at Harvest Davenport. How many years were you on staff?
Just about 9.
9 years.
Yeah.
Okay. So we met in Davenport. He was buddies with Hank, and as well as some other folks that we know from Davenport. Had a heart for church planting. Had a heart for Rock Island, Quad Cities area, and he'll tell you more about that community and kind of what drew him there. But and I also, just a fun fact, I was at Doug's ordination, which was 2015, 14.
No, that would have been 17. It was last year.
No, it wasn't. Was it really?
Stop. I know. I
Yeah.
know.
Yes.
It was like
17.
the spring
This has
or
been the longest year of my life. So yeah, no, 17.
So last year, I
Yeah.
don't know what I was doing at that time.
I don't know how many papers they submitted to you. Maybe that was 3 years ago. I had a lot of drafts. No.
It is almost 19.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I don't know what you think.
So Doug,
Did you bring any guys with you when you came that way?
no, but we were part of some of these guys were at the elder training, or deacons.
That's what it was.
We
Okay.
had a team of about 8 people there.
You remember
So-
that? I was at that as well. Okay.
Yeah, that was a good event, actually.
That was a couple years ago too. By Ken and Rick Donald did that, right?
Yeah, that was helpful for us.
There's been a couple of church plants come out.
We went to a men's conference in Quad
Down there lately.
Cities.
That's one of the guys on Facebook.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the men's conference was there in Davenport.
We've been to Davenport a lot. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we could return the favor. We found Decatur, so we're
You can't-
good.
you can't- yeah.
The lake is beautiful. I tell you, that was nice. Just kind of right into it. It's good.
So thanks for being here, brother.
Hey, thank you for the
You
opportunity.
can take over and do
Yeah.
what you need to do, and then we'll run some questions by you.
Well, hey, let me just pray and we'll get started. God, just want to say thank you for the opportunity to be amongst these men, God, for the church that you've charged to their headship and leadership, God, as they submit to you. I thank you for it, God, for the faithfulness in ministry, for the common friendships we've shared over the years. And now, God, as we talk, I pray you make, God, the vision clear of what it is you're doing. So we just love you. God, thank you for the opportunity to be involved in the work and watch you just front lines, be faithful to your promise to build your church.
Mm-hmm.
So we lift this down to you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Well, great introduction. That shortened the talk by at least half, so we're good. So this is my family right here. You get to meet half of us, which is really cool. My wife, Chris, and I, we've been married 11 years. We were at the Quad Cities since 2009. If I hit rewind just a little bit, I did my seminary career in Denver, is where I finished my master's. And this is our son, Xander. These ages are wrong already. As you know, kids age fast. They're 7 and 5, and we are expecting in December, so we're really excited about that. They started school today. Today was day 1 of kindergarten for this little one, which breaks my heart, and 2nd grade for that boy right there. So just awesome kids, all part of this, and really cool to see what God has been doing in their lives as a result. And so I'm going to hit background a little bit. So I have been serving, like Tony said, the last 9 years on staff at Harvest Davenport and in the outreach capacity. Started as just the local outreach pastor, is what they had brought me on to do, which was really just to connect the church to local agencies and opportunities to have our small groups and other ministries mobilized for the work of serving our city. Where we are, I was just kind of getting some Decatur facts. So Rock Island is about half the size, almost exactly, of Decatur. The Quad Cities, though, in general, is about 300,000 people. And so two cities on the north side of the Mississippi, believe it or not, it's the only part of the country where the Mississippi flows east to west. And then two cities in Illinois on the south side of the Mississippi. So learned a whole lot doing that. We really gained a whole lot of relationships and what was going on in our community. And the way we're kind of situated is the north east part of the city of the Quad Cities is Bettendorf, Iowa, which would be kind of your more resourced end of town. Our church is almost right there in the middle of it, but where most of our partnerships were was on the southwest portion of the city. So opposite corners is just where you would find where the Refugee Resettlement Office was, which is we have a World Relief. We're blessed to have that ministry in our town. We have the Crisis Pregnancy Centers. We have the kind of the urban youth ministries. We had some addiction recovery ministries, and they're all about 20 minutes away on the southwest portion of our city. And so found myself spending a whole lot of time there, and that would be kind of Rock Island, Davenport, across the river, a whole lot. And I started asking questions right when you're kind of getting to know where you are. Tell me about this place. Kind of where's the darkest dark kind of guy. Like that's just like, tell me the history of this place. That ended up being Century Woods, which was a Section 8 apartment complex in Rock Island. About 230 apartments or so. Kind of that classic. I mean, we just drove up Martin Luther King Drive. I was expecting full-on rural when I was coming here. Not when I came down. I was at Panera Bread right there. If you know where that is, about 15 minutes away. And kind of looking around going, okay, this feels like Rock Island. Like this, that just kind of felt like it. And so, in any case, we're at this... Say, yeah, not Panera Bread. No, driving down and then we hit the lake, right? And everything changes. I mean, it's pretty visual change. And so we started to, I went to the property management of that apartment complex and just basically said, well, what can we do? What do you see are the honest? I'm a much more, I capitalize on assets, so hey, what's the best thing that's going on here? Like honestly, the refugee families are pretty solid. We love what's going on. There's some there's division ethnically, but we can make some more community happen. Then what are the challenges? And then of course there came a list of those as a typical kind of urban challenges there. But God opened the door for really 7 years of partnership with that neighborhood and continues on even to today. But we started with things in that neighborhood with soccer clubs. When the nations are on your doorstep, soccer is the world's sport. So we don't know much about that, but we could stand to be taught, which was awesome. What started as 10 kids over the years became, we had 105 kids. This year we had 40 at our soccer camp. So it just kind of ebbs and flows as the neighborhood changes. We did neighborhood barbecues, which that usually gets about 200 or 300 people out when you just wheel up a grill and start drawing people outwards. And then one of my favorites still was the Christmas parties we used to do in the neighborhood. We used to rent just like a circus pole tent and put in patio heaters in the middle of December. And our ladies made about 3,000 cookies. We did hot chocolate from the local grocery store, and hundreds of people would come out. We ended up having over the years even a Congolese choir say, hey, we're going to sing to you instead of you guys Christmas caroling through our neighborhood. And just a neat reciprocity over the years.
So this was outreach from
Davenport. So this is just some of the story of like over the years watching it grow. And so here's what happened though, right? So you can get, honestly, there was a crux of a year where it snowed. And what I didn't realize is refugees, at least by us, don't like coming out in the snow. So here I am, 150 volunteers, and no one comes outside. And so here we are, ethnic majority culture, all white pretty much, in the middle of the urban ghetto, and no one's coming out to the Christmas party. And something tripped in my soul, honestly going, wait a minute, like events aren't discipling people. This isn't, we're commuters, we're not insiders, right? I can go back to my house 20 minutes away and I'll say, I'll see you 6 months later at the soccer camp. There just was no way to ongoingly keep up with the relationship. And so while we were, yes, communicating the gospel at all these events, it was this, we're not making disciples. Like, it's going to be transient, I'm not going to see them again, these kind of things. And so for us, for my wife and I, so we were living in Bettendorf, about 5 minutes away from Harvest Davenport. It was a soul-searching time, and decided, hey, you know what we need to do as a family is we need to move. I was the outreach pastor. Honestly, I was looking for young single men to move into Century Woods. I was like, I'm going to move you in like an urban missionary. We'll figure out how to get you in a Section 8 apartment complex. We'll pay your rent, and we can do kind of like the Harvest House model, if you're familiar with what they had done in Elgin, of just like, hey, move guys in, have great ministry, after-school clubs and all this. If you ever had that conversation with the Lord where it's just like you're pointing the finger and then all of a sudden it goes like that, it took us a little bit. It just did. And in the meantime, he surrounded us with several families who had just a similar calling that way. We didn't say anything. I had one guy come in, I want to talk to you about jail ministry, and I feel like God's calling me to move to the city. And you're like, wow. All right, let's talk about that. It's interesting. God's calling us to move to Rock Island. And so in the end, we had a handful of families move down with us. And so for the past now 2.5, 3 years, coming up in December, we've been down in Rock Island living there as neighbors. I will tell you that it's changed everything. Absolutely everything. We've done identical events. And then you get asked the question, well, where do you live? Right there. All I can say is that ineffable of like, wait, what? You live there, and it is, we just have felt very received. We look nothing like our neighborhood, ethnically speaking. We have all sorts of neighbors from all sorts of different nations that way, certain socioeconomically different. All by all outward appearances would not be well received by, if you're just kind of calling the shots, be like, this isn't going to go so well. We've taken, though, I will say, even early on in talking with the elders at Davenport, we had a lot of conversations about how this thing is going to look. So we have a campus. We have a West campus or a multi-site thing. Doug, we should do a campus. We had about a year's conversation about why, personally, that's not going to work for me. Missiologically speaking, we have to have local leadership. Honestly, we're praying that God's going to raise up men right there from those blocks to lead the church. And why we didn't want to preach the same messages or do the same worship sets and things like that. Ways that we needed to culturally contextualize what we were doing. Awesome conversation. We all arrived at the same destination. And then it was, well, when you move there, so this conversation started years and years ago. Well, when you move there, that's when you should plant the church. No. We got to build relationships. I'm not going to bait, right? We receive lots of stories on the neighborhood's perception and how the relationships with pastors have been in the past. Not always great relationships. They kind of see, or learning at least about the black church in our area, is that the pastor seems to be just above all sorts of accountability, and people are well aware of the double lives that are being lived, but nobody holds the men accountable, and they still keep attending church there. And so for us, 2.5 years of relationship building and just eating dinner with, throwing block parties, these kind of things have really brought the barriers down till by the time we launched, which we launched June 24th, which we're 8 weeks into this whole adventure, the neighbors started asking, when is the church starting? Much better posture for us than to say, hey, I'm the new pastor in the neighborhood, come to my church. And so we're thankful for that. God has just totally shown up in that. And like I said, this summer has been doing very much the same things that we have always done. The soccer camp, the barbecue was just over 200 people. All new faces. Every year it's new faces, and yet some I think the proof in the pudding sometimes is we had a soccer camp, watched a kid get off the city bus and run out. He goes, I saw your car. So I drive a yellow car. It's kind of, everybody knows who's driving that car. And he's like, I can't believe it. You're still here. And he came and he brought the entire high school varsity soccer team, who we started with 7 years ago, to be a part of helping out with soccer camp this year. And so it's just really, really neat how, though the faces leave this apartment complex, everybody knows, and they keep coming back that way. In any case, so here we are planting with the Harvest Bible Chapel. Harvest Bible Chapel Davenport has been behind us, supportive of us, and kind of sending us out, which best way to leave a church, right? Being sent, right? Not split. I was so thankful for that after 9 years to say, hey, we're behind you. We see that this city is different where we are. We want to send you out. That being said, I'm not going to present to you any DNA that's going to feel very much different to you at all, other than to say what our wrestling has been is how do we contextualize, I'm going to just say harvest language in a way that's going to make sense to our surroundings. Even some of the translations of the Bible, right? We use ESV right now. You guys use ESV? I just want to make sure I'm not saying
Inspired version.
I mean, that's right. Right, so I'm still preaching on ESV, but I'll tell you, leading Bible studies we've had guys, Thursday night Bible studies with high school guys, it's difficult, the language. And so we're figuring out how do we keep clarity and still make it simple language. So, that being said, mission statement, I've stumbled my toes on this. Tell me, are you glorify God through fulfillment of the Great Commission, the Spirit of the Great Commitment? Or have you changed it? Saved, matured, multiplied?
We glorify God by making mature disciples who worship, walk, and work.
Boom. See, that might be the best. See, Tony's a thinker. It's really good that you can coalesce the W's and all of it together. So, for us, we were just unpacking some things for our context instead of glorify, to give glory to God by, here it is, the disciple-making process, by making disciples who continue the process of making disciples. And then for us, man, if you can't tell, proximity matters. That's just the calling God's put in our hearts to say, hey, you know where it starts? It's going to start here but we better not neglect the ends of the earth. So 9 years. So over the 9 years, I not only did local, started to oversee global and the global partnerships with the fellowship, and we support missionaries as well, Harvest Davenport, on an individual basis, and so wanted to preserve that, believing that the nations that are here in Rock Island, well, there in Rock Island, since we're not there right now, are an asset, as well as the opportunity he gives us to see the gospel spread ahead to the ends of the earth. And so that's how we phrased our mission statement to our church, and slowly but surely, right, keep banging that drum until it kind of gets in. Priority-wise, again, nothing different here. So thankful for my time at Davenport. I didn't grow up in a healthy church environment. And so to watch God's Word open up on a regular basis and watch His Word taught through systematically, so thankful for that. All about that, making it count, making it matter to the people. We've started in the book of Ephesians, is where our first sermon series comes from. We have made it into chapter 2 after 8 weeks, so thankful for that.
What did you preach yesterday?
Yesterday was 2:4-7, and so it was all about there's hope because our God has done the impossible and our God has intervened in our story. And 1-3 was really hard because I had to sit on sin for a whole week, but it was so good for our people. But honestly, that was, for what it matters, that was the most viewed message in 8 weeks, was the one on sin. It was harder for me to preach. I was just like getting sick in the middle of it, like, oh. So anyway, Ephesians, really excited to get to some of the stuff that on diversity and unity, especially considering our context and things of that nature and what all that says. But worship, we've taken, some of these right now from the Great Commission Collective, familiar with all that's going on in that, so nothing different there. Fervent prayer, I will say that this is, I don't know what your experience has been, I have found that this most often is the crumbling pillar of churches that I see. And we are really trying to figure out, we have had our team since day one prayer walking the neighborhoods, praying house by house. People will receive prayer where we are. I actually learned this from a bunch of junior high girls last year. We took an 8th grade mission trip to our city. I said, all right, girls, like, hey, you're going to go out with your leaders, you're going to pray. And they started to stop yard by yard when they saw somebody, and everybody received prayer. I was like, you know what? Okay, God, till the soil with this. And so our team, it's been good for them to see more of the neighborhood and pray through it. Evangelism-wise, all I can say early on is by week 3 we were doing evangelism training as part of our core team. Our meetings that way. I just think we assume so often that folks know what the gospel is, let alone how to be conversational with it, and learn that again from being a missions pastor and putting it on applications for short-term mission trips. What is the gospel? And you have a husband and wife on totally different pages, right? So it's like, hey, let's make sure we get this right from the beginning. So, again, not too different. With the mission, making disciples who make disciples, we're fighting, right, for clarity in this. I will cite the source immediately here that I've stolen with permission from Oakville. Robbie kind of sold us on some things here. And the reason I'm saying that is I think for our context this is clear. A disciple is, and here's where we've kind of landed, one who makes the most of their time to become more and more like Jesus Christ. There's a lot of wasting time that goes on where I live. A lot of video games, a lot of sitting, a lot of squandering in some various things. So Ephesians 5, right? Pay careful attention in how do you live, not as unwise but as wise, making the most of the time because the days are evil. And so one of the things that they had developed there that I thought was helpful, it's worship walk work, just with a few extra acronyms, right? 5 G's instead of 3 W's. You've got time, gather time, group time, give time, and go time. A disciple prioritizes time with the Lord personally. Something we can't do for somebody, but we can certainly encourage them to do it. They prioritize gathering with God's people. They prioritize, again, this would be kind of where your small groups would fall. How are you getting with 2 or 3 in an accountability context? And practicing the one another's giving of not only of your money, but of your gifts, as 1 Peter 4 says. And then the outreach pastor in me says, you gotta go. You gotta keep going. Don't forget the going piece. Lastly here, because I definitely want to receive your questions. So, we were, at the beginning of this whole process of planning a church is when stuff started to happen at the fellowship. Okay? For what that's worth, I never had to think of a church name in my life. I knew I was part of the Harvest family, and early on, I say this because I get asked this question all the time, where I am, because people are like, wait a minute, does Harvest still like you? Like, did you get sent? The answer is yes. Early on, the name wasn't available to us. That was some of the early conversations, so we had to get on that and do logo things. Now, as God would have it, we really see that this is what our city needs. I think even Rob Willie would say to me, hey, we're kind of saturated on the harvest market for the Quad Cities. We can get outside of that, but where we are is good. And so here's where, the reason I'm saying this, kind of our whole story is encapsulated here in the logo. Hopefully you see, I could ask you, but I've cheated you right here. You see the cross, right? That's actually, if I point to the map here, that's 11th Street and 7th Avenue in the middle of our city. Those are the two main drags there. This is a zoomed in Google map of the 3 West End neighborhoods, which is where we're seeking to reach about 10,000 people. You can pull up churches on Google Maps, you get about 7 blips on the radar screen is what qualifies as a church. If you go past those buildings, it's interesting to see what they qualify as a church. So we'll count 7 for 10,000 people. I think there's room for us. Stained glass, man, some of the artists, right, they love to see those kind of things. And a reminder, man, that the church is central to God's plan. And certainly the colors, both the unity and diversity that we're praying for as a church. I can't be any more clear, right? So Harvest Bible Chat, one of the things I used to love to say in announcements is, here's the deal, Bible's our middle name, right? Every time I'd preach, I'd be like, hey, the ushers, raise your hand, because Bible's our middle name. You better get it in your hands and open it up. And so we believe, man, that shows not only the place we're passionate for, Rock Island, it shows our priority in the Bible, and it tells people, this is a local church. We have mosques, we have temples, we have all sorts of things that way. This is what a local church looks like. We're not going to be confused, especially when language is an issue, but that's who we are. So I'll leave it at that, and we'll take questions.
Did you want any of these passed on?
Oh, yeah, for sure. You guys, this is some, I don't know how you were as a church planner, Tony, but like sometimes you get excited about things you print. You're just like, hey, look at this. Somebody did a great job, and it wasn't me. This is how, here, I'll let you pass that around. Door hangers. We've really wrestled with the use of technology in our environment, knowing that social media is pretty hot because people have their cell phones and they figure out how to snipe Wi-Fi from various free locations. But the thing is that nobody has internet in their homes, and so the reason I'm saying that, we did old school 1,500 doors with our core team, and gotten some amazing conversations. These are our service invite cards, so you guys can see a pretty clear question of what are you doing Sunday? How clear can you make it, right? And then this is our version. What do you guys do? Registers? What do you guys do? Yeah, friendship register. So this is our version of that. More or less nothing that will look too different. Other than I'll say, we've tried to allow for the fact that generally families are larger than what we're used to in suburban. So we allow room for 4 kids there, making sure we're capturing birthdays and things like that to preserve some of that family feel of church. But other than that, you guys can see it all. And
Tell this story about the MLK Center.
thank you. Yeah, so where we are currently. Yeah, Tony got to hear some of the suspense of all this. This is some of those terrifying moments, but there's a community center. It's Falls. I'm gonna walk around so I don't hit it. Community center's like right here, kind of right on the border here, almost in the center of the cross. It is the place where our city has poured in all of their monies. 5 years ago, they poured in about $10 million to renovate this community center. All of the social services, for lack of a better term, operate in this building. The after-school programs, the biggest day camp during the summer. They do free tax help. They do free legal. Like, it's all here. And it's a beautiful facility. And it's one of those things where we are, there's not a ton to choose from. You have the old, beautiful churches. We approached one who had flat out told us no because of our stance on heterosexual marriage. I was sold on it. I was like, man, I want that bit. We made it so clear that door's shut, right? Community center, 4 blocks away. You look at it and you go, wow, man, they got a banquet room for 400 people. Then they have classrooms like a school that would just fit perfectly with kids ministry. And you're just looking at this going, I wonder. Well, started in February asking them, got the church and state jargon for a long, long time. And I wasn't buying it. I just was like, wait a minute. Public use of space, if a school can host a church, the school was a huge asset to us. We started with our core team meeting in the cafeteria of the school right across the street from our house. And that would have been great. We got a little scared in summertime because there was no heating and air conditioning, and people, man, I don't need to help them fall asleep in church, right? Like that was too much, making it too easy for them. And so, anyway, it kept going to the point where we were getting conversations with the city attorney. And like I said, we got to make it clear we are not an adversary. We want to be an advocate, but you're making it hard for us to serve the same city. Well, long story short, I guess the Tuesday before launch is when we got the yes on the building. I had to have a plan B all the way up till 5 days before
What was
launch.
your plan B to school?
Plan B was the school.
Plan A was-
However, we already printed these.
So I printed those.
So
I hit print on Monday on those. I was like, how late can I wait to the printer? Those came on Wednesday. Tuesday was the yes. Our team went out on Saturday because it rained on Friday and hung 1,500 things. It was unbelievable. And God has opened the door right now. Just found out this last week. I was at a board meeting at the community center. They are opening the doors for a 6-month lease, renewable. And so hoping, right now we had the comment from their employees like, how are we doing? Like, are we annoying to you? We know it's Sunday morning, nobody else is here. And flat out said, are you kidding me? You guys have left the building better. Like, it's just that reputation stuff where you're like, we have to build a reputation quickly to be an asset here. And it seems as if God has gone before us in that. We're so thankful.
Your office is there, so
So yeah, that's the other thing. We are continuing, right, because that's a city building project. I don't know how Decatur works. It's probably smooth and quick. But Rock Island, they call Little Chicago for a reason. There's a lot of red tape. So they are building out new offices. There are 2 that are coming available as soon as they're available. The reason I say 2, one's for a little bit of storage, and as well as a volunteer office who come in midweek to help with data entry and things like that. So as soon as I can have an office and have a worship service in the same place, that's a huge asset. It'll be a day. My wife says yes, that'll be a day. There's too many boxes in the house, so yeah.
Right now he's using
Books.
the library,
You don't have
public
any books,
library
don't you,
in the house, so.
Yeah, yeah, right. So
So you're not taking office space out of Davenport, the umbilical cord is cut, you're off and running.
correct, yeah. So I've been working on the Rock Island Public Library. Some amazing gospel conversation moments have come as people watch you with your commentaries and studying that. What are you doing? Why does that take so long? What are you? There it is. God gives you opportunity. So right now that's where we're at. Yeah.
So tell me the demographic makeup of Rock Island,
Mm-hmm.
and then tell me, at least in your first 8 weeks, how the church is breaking down demographically.
Yeah, so one of the interesting things is here, so this is it would be the northwest corner of Rock Island, is these 3 neighborhoods. And the other 3 quarters that kind of surround it. So we have a very stark contrast of up the hill, down the hill. So as much as I could say, I don't know, was it north side of the lake, south side of the lake? You're right, you can see it. I'm just here, you can see it. We have up the hill, down the hill. So I just say that because demographically, this part is very different. If I were to pull up those, if you've ever seen an ethnic dot map, where it's just all the different colors. Where this breaks down, you'd probably have, it's around 80% African American, somewhere in there. Then you'd have your 10 to 15% of the various refugees. So you have Burmese, you have a number of African cultures, and then you have Iraqi. So just this year we were learning as we were doing the soccer camp that the Iraqi population in that Section 8 complex is through the roof. So I need to stop grilling pork. Right, it's just what you learn. Like, I guess next year's chicken, and I'm probably going to entrust it to them, or lamb. And we can have some halal meat. I'm good with that. Like, we're fine. We're free to eat that. It's really good tasting. So in any case, and then the remaining 5% or so would be Caucasian. And so we see that kind of played out in the school. There's about 10 languages in the school that are represented, just linguistic-wise, which is really, really cool. Outside of here, though, there'd be a big switch. You probably have 70% as a city, 70% white.
In Waukon.
Yeah, and then so you can kind of see that it's a really interesting breakdown.
None of the church.
Yeah, sorry, the church-wise. So one of the fun things you get to think through of going, well, as we're building a core team, finding mature believers right away from the streets of Rock Island this is why we're here. So where are they, right? So we do know some believers in the neighborhood. We're thankful that some have joined our core team. But I say that because the majority of our core team is not from Rock Island, although has very unique ties to Rock Island. So we have folks that have worked in Rock Island for 30 years and live elsewhere. We've had folks that are investing in different ways, or are just called to kind of go with the goers, the ones that are just comfortable with, hey, this is all different than I am, but I'm drawn to this. That being said, and then we have several families, like I said, within blocks of our house.
It's a team of about 30.
Yeah, so our core team, we launched with 30. As we kind of went down to the bare minimum rules, our timeline was not the 9-month timeline. It was a 3-month timeline. February, March, April. I guess no, 5-month timeline. Yep, so just cut in half. We launched June 24th that way. And so right now, as we kind of look out, we have a handful of African American families. I have 2, and when I say handful, probably 3, 4.
3 families, I would say.
Then we have a couple intermixed families,
Yeah.
2 families, and then we have an African family that's coming, and then the remainder look like,
Hispanic.
we have some Hispanic, yeah, we have 2 Hispanic families, thank you. And then the rest look like us. And so that was one of the things, right, these are the things you wrestle through, going like, hey, no secret, right, your initial ones that you're going to draw look a whole lot like the pastor. One of the things we've tried to do to start to reflect more of the neighborhood, to at least draw it, would be, even from the initial get-go of a welcome announcement, those kind of things, we're putting faces that look nothing like me in front of them. Our worship leader, though he is white, grew up in the west end of Rock Island. He's jazz piano by major in college, which honestly, like, keys communicate far more than an acoustic guitar where we are, just culturally. And so we're figuring that out right now, praying for more, and yeah.
For those 30 core group folks, these are transplants that came with you from Harvest Davenport, or these people that you just built up?
It'd be a mix. A good chunk from Davenport. Nope. So that was one of the elder conversations was, should we send a launch team with you?
Yeah.
And the answer, I said no. That'll feel like colonialism. Like, I'm not here to plant a flag, we're here to plant a church. And so the reason I'm saying that is this whole task here can draw a lot of wrong motives behind it, right? Those that are wanting to serve the poor in some sense of a messiah complex, or those that are just like, man, a false sense of martyrdom, these kind of things. And so we just wanted, if we were going to, and we talked with the others, like, there's some people that have already asked, others that we're pursuing, are you okay with this? That are much more strategic asks than saying, hey, church, we need 80 people to go with them over to Rock Island. And so that's actually kind of fleshed out a bit, even in our West Davenport campus. They wish they would have done it different. Now the neighborhood's coming, it's kind of flip-flop, so we're praising God for that. But early on, it was really difficult. And so, anyway, lessons learned.
Hang was there, wasn't he? He was the worshiper.
Hang was helping out in all sorts of
I know more about that than I probably should.
Hey, listen, I'd have Hang leave Houston in a second, man. I love that guy. I do. Just to eat with him, really. Let's. He knows how to eat. Yeah.
Are there gospel preaching churches in the community that have more of an African American heritage that you know? We've struggled with that
City.
indicator.
Yeah.
Healthy ones? Not like currently healthy ones?
Yeah.
Grace City, Second Baptist would be the 2. I'd put 2 on there. Grace City has been one. He actually used to be the former director of the Martin Luther King Center. Very, very well-known, prominent African American figure across our city. He moved his church just in the last year and a half, 2 years, to Rock Island. It was in Moline. He dropped his position at the King Center and then moved the church into the city. And so he's about a mile down the road. I'd say almost a mile. good relationship. We were just actually on one of the webinars for GCC for prayer stuff. And the reason I'm saying this is my priority over this fall is there's a pretty, I don't know how it is here, there's a wall for us between the white and black church in Rock Island. There's actually what's called Wood River Baptist Church Conference, and it's an island unto itself. But darn it, like, we gotta build, like this Ephesians 2, right? We're breaking down every dividing wall of hostility. Like, we gotta stop doing this. Like, Rock Island needs the church. This is definitely a time we need the Big C church together. And so, but I would say he's preaching the word. The other one's Second Baptist. It's probably the largest Black Baptist church in the Quad Cities. What I will say, they're commuter churches. So because we don't have a ton of African American churches to choose from, they're driving from Bettendorf, you look at Second Baptist, they're full of Iowa license plates. And that's what we're finding with a lot of those 7 blips on the radar screen. Like, they're not drawing the neighborhood. The church right by us is United Church of Christ, not gospel preaching. I actually grew up in United Church of Christ. And it's an old family church, and they still do their Christmas service in German. We don't have any Germans where we are. I listed all the country. The Germans are gone. I think the church needs to go with the Germans, a community or two over, where they're driving from. And so, anyway, yeah, it's interesting. So yeah, two solid churches that way. Those are 2 men that I'm looking at really building relationships more with. Reverend Ford at Grace City for the outreach component. We have a basic relationship. Now it's like, what's ministry look like? It's 2 churches next to each other.
Is the refugee community transient, or are they being settled in Rock Island permanently?
I would say they're transient within Rock Island. There's a lot of staying. I look at the guys, we just sent 2 guys off to college today. This is our last meeting with them for a little while. And the guys we've known for 5 or 6 years, their families have stayed. They're Rwandan and something Congolese. Let me get it wrong. Anyway, they seem to be staying. There's more coming. If they're getting resettled in Chicago, they're coming toward us because they want out of Chicago. And they want to be close. They'd rather be out of that and kind of settle close together. They are not worshiping in Rock Island, so we're finding, especially like the Burmese, there's 7 Burmese congregations, 2 cities over in East Moline. So there's Moline and then East Moline. It'd be awesome to get some Burmese believers, but they live in Rock Island. And then the African congregations, there's 1 strong African congregation. Took a hit in this last year, but they're drawing about 8 countries worth, I'm learning more about tribalism, just the divides that were there. It's really hard to overcome for them. And then there's another African congregation just south of us in Milan.
But the one African congregation is wanting to possibly.
And there's one African congregation may do something like a merger over time with us. We're close with them. I preached there. I've done a wedding there. We're trying to get them, honestly, to define their doctrine a bit. Because it's really not, what do you think on these things? Or we need to just be developed in these things. Like, just where are we at with all that? Because I usually don't understand what's being said. It's all Swahili. So that's, right? You don't want to get anything lost in translation. That's can be scary. So anyway, yeah, that's a promising opportunity as well.
Talk a little bit about the generations, the cultural generations.
Oh, just work with refugees in general, right? You have first generation that's been resettled, where language, they're still speaking mother tongue language, and there's a need, right, to build into that, very difficult to reach. But then you have a kid generation who's in the schools, speaking English well, and drawn to American culture, kind of letting go. There's a grieving process. We're watching this now with families where it's like, kind of shirking my first ethnicity and kind of heading into this American culture piece. And so it's just a hot mess of, right, when you resettle somebody in the middle of an urban ghetto, what happens? And just watching that and how is very, very interesting. But it presents some varying ministry opportunities. To the English ones, you can preach in English, and they're understanding it as a first language by the time they're getting in high school anyways. But we still have to think about things like ESL and things like translation. What are we going to do with that? What's that going to look like? Or how are we going to raise up a leader to reach with whether it's evangelism or discipleship opportunity, or just a small group? We're going to have a Burmese leader to reach the Karen-speaking Burmese. Like, what are we going to do? And so, yeah, these are some of the things I'm just trying to think through.
some of the African American challenges, there's a lot of church hurt and baggage that comes
Yeah.
with that population, so that's some of why they're not going anywhere is the mistrust in the church. But
Pastors abusing authority or churches.
a lot of that, yeah, which,
So we just have asked a lot of questions, right? I mean, it's been almost a near vertical learning curve. It's just a line. You're just like, okay, I definitely don't know a lot here. But some of the stuff of just like, how many times are you going to pass a plate in a service? You start to ask multiple sets of friends. We had one breakfast where we just, honestly, we told them, we're like, we just have questions of Black Church and we just need you all to come together for breakfast and just listen to what we have to say. We just have questions. Pastor's appreciation or pastor's birthday. Just watching 10K go into his pocket. And everybody's good with it. And they're like, yeah, that's just normal. I'm like, no, that's not normal. Like that, what? And so it's been just very, very eye-opening. You
the
watch,
speaking in tongues, the abuse of that,
yeah,
there's a lot of pastors who are in adultery and are
and well-known, like
are
the streets talk.
not being approached on it, and just a lot of trust things. So the reputation in the relationship, excuse me, has been really important with with that population, those members.
And as far as we know, we've asked, not one of them live in the neighborhood
Of the
pastors.
pastors.
of the Black pastors.
Right.
Oh,
No, the one does.
Which one?
Next to Greater Antioch, he lives right in the first
Oh,
one.
well, yeah, sometimes. It's hard. That's really, really hard, and that's what's been important for us to just be steady. I mean, we've had various challenges come up where people, the first question they're asking, are you going to leave? Because that happened. You know, things like stolen car, flip in the front yard, right? Are you
wait,
leaving?
that happened to you?
Yeah. Yeah, this
Well,
is the
Our car wasn't stolen, the stolen car.
stolen car crashed into.
Into our yard.
Yes.
Or
It's over
garage
here
gets
today.
broken into, or bullets go through our house.
We
or,
had,
you know, all
Memorial
sorts
Day was our first bullets into the house, and they're just like, that's scary, right? I mean, you saw my kids. It was like 5 feet below my daughter's bedroom. So we moved our bedroom, but the first question, are you gonna leave? I'm telling you, it's just that it is the ministry of presence. Are you gonna bleed like we bleed? Are you gonna cry like we cry? Are you gonna hurt like we hurt? I've had opportunities. I have a chaplain badge from when I worked at the Bettendorf department, and it has got me behind the caution lines to pray with families watching their house burn down twice. We've just been with families and just be like, hey, here's a cup of cold water, let's talk. Those kind of things, it's just.
Well, and constant police and fire trucks and ambulances and stuff up and down for all various reasons, but, there's a difference I've realized between getting your cell phone out and videotaping something or just being out and gathering for curiosity's sake versus actually caring and really asking questions to engage. And so even the other day there was an ambulance out, and when we came home we kind of rerouted and I went out to the parking lot behind this area, kind of kitty corner from our house, and there are some girls that I had seen, and I just said, hey, what happened, because the ambulance left with their lights and all that, and the one girl looked at the other girl and she said, can you tell her she can be trusted? And so it was interesting because I already had a relationship with one girl, and she was saying, yeah, she's safe, like, to her, and then she opened up and shared what had happened, but just that relationship is so important.
So my wife serves as a school nurse on a semi-regular basis as a sub, and that's been, gold. You're like the neighborhood mom. Miss Kristen, they like her far more than they like me, but which is totally
Families and
understandable.
counseling is basically
Yeah,
the
it's
role
just
of the
amazing.
school. It's like,
It's just amazing. Yeah. So some of, just kind of to tell the story of the neighborhood, like you can recognize, or even with your own maybe stereotypes or thoughts, right? There's some challenges that come with this, and one of them for sure is financial. We've been, Davenport, these conversations have been so good, right? Because you're thinking through this going, well, no spreadsheet looks good. Because if we look at, so a median income, if I were to describe our neighborhood, is between $20,000 and $21,000 for a family. Who knows? I'm going to just say tithing's not being taught because we're having pastors' appreciation days. right? So whatever's happening, it's not tithing or offering in a healthy sense of the way. And so part of the challenge has been too, like, well, okay, our core team, we're not drawing from the neighborhood, and so what their giving capacity is far different than the neighborhood that we're praying to draw. Let alone they've been challenged, right? We've challenged them specifically with raising $50,000 by the end of the year, and just saying, hey, can you give? Now, Davenport has been super helpful on kind of the startup front. They were able to take an end of the year offering for us, kind of start a fund, and honestly, that really covered our startup costs, which were really, really good. These days, at least the numbers I'm hearing, they're telling in the harvest world about 75 for startup costs. We were able to do it for about 22, 23. I feel like we're spending too exorbitantly at all. Thankful for that. One of the cool things, the Martin Luther King Center, I could return the projector that we bought. So there was like $6,500 that we got back because we were just like, they have one on the ceiling and it cost me $50 to rent it. So we're just gonna rent our production guy. Davenport's been a huge asset, especially on that front of guys just having eyes on it and saying, hey, wait a minute, you don't need to buy that, you don't need to buy that. So just really kind of trying to think through, kind of like I say it like a Navy SEAL or Marine, like what can you do, ministry in a box? You know, just think about with how little you can do with to make this work in a way that's still and something that you can stand behind and be a quality product that way. But so in any case, as we've kind of watched, just financially, it's really hard to say where giving is going to be at right now, because I don't know if people from our core team are tithing right now, or if they're giving more aggressively to meet the goal by the end of the year. So that's one variable that we have going on. I will say, we have partnered, so part of my training last year, we also went with North American Mission Board. One of the things, again, in the midst of the fellowship transition, we ended up not going to the training center. We did some training in-house. John Cochran, our executive pastor, was a huge part of coaching other guys in the process. Was like, hey, we can get the playbooks and work through some things. We also flew to a number of Great Commission Collective churches at this point in time, or just Harvest. I don't even know what to call them. Guys, old guard guys, man. We were in Phoenix and we were in Oakville, so you could just steal stuff. Like, here you go, guys. Just helpful that way. But the reason we pursued North American Mission Board is because they had familiarity with the urban context, and so they had a cohort going in Detroit, which was once a month for 8 months, something like that. Really, really good. Just
Who did that?
Huh?
Who did that?
North American Mission Board.
Oh,
They hosted a cohort. Which ended up just being
Southern Baptist.
Southern Baptist.
Oh.
Yeah, I don't know if that has more baggage than North American Mission Board. So you can say North and not South. Maybe I don't know. In any
We
case.
like the Southern.
Yeah, good. All right. We're Southern Baptist friendly. So it's it was a good experience. I say that because some of our funding for the last year they've been giving towards my salary to help Davenport be able to kind of wean us off that way. For the next 2, they've committed. The largest gift they committed to a church. We're actually going under the Iowa Baptist Committee because Davenport is in Iowa, and so it's kind of giving through there, but of $24,000 over each year for the next 2 years, which is helping as well decrease the salary and all of that. That's what they wanted to go towards. They helped with, they just helped in all sorts of different ways. Kind of interested to see what else those relationships kind of look like. So, I mean, overall, yeah, we're just kind of like watching. Davenport's kind of figuring things out. They've committed to $50,000 a year for the next 3, with it kind of tapering down after that. That's going, again, directly to see us supported. Right now, ministry expense-wise, we're going to see what the giving capacity is. Additionally, we have personally kind of approached this as a missionary endeavor, just in terms of, this is where it kind of like breaks from the model a little bit of like, we put out 350 support letters, and we're just like, here's what we're doing. We are looking for monthly support. I mean, one time is super, super helpful. Monthly helps us build a budget. It's just kind of solid because we don't, it's going to be feast or famine, and when is the neighborhood giving going to start to be reflected? If it's, we estimated it is probably about $6 per person giving, and that was based on some of John's experience both in St. Vincent and Mexico City, and going, hey, well, here's median incomes, what are we thinking? And this is our best guess that seemed to be right in the range.
$6 per week per person.
Per person. Yeah.
Which is way low.
Which is way low. Right. So like I said, our core team does not reflect that, but man, if the neighborhood starts to come, that's kind of what we're thinking, where it's gonna be. I do know right now, just in terms of any kind of deficits we're thinking through, we know right now Davenport wants an expectation that we're starting to raise towards some of my salary and benefits, which is a good thing. We have about $11,000 gap there. So I was saying that's because that'll be over the next 2 years, and then when the Baptist funding drops, that's going towards that, that'll climb to then 35,000. And so, again, some of it's just a variable, kind of seeing where the neighborhood gives and all of that. But yeah, we're excited. We want to see a church here, and it started, and it is a church. We're doing communion for the first time next week, which I'm sure we'll stub our toes all over that. You know, we'll figure it out. We'll have bread. We'll have wine. It'll be good. So anyway. What questions, man?
I like your logo, it's cool.
Thanks. I could do.
So as far as your service goes,
Yeah.
obviously you haven't done too many yet.
Yeah. I'm 8 in, right?
Yeah,
There we
good.
go.
But what's it look like as far as like the production aspect of it? You know, are you molding that to neighborhood culture too?
Yeah.
Or?
So this is probably the biggest tension right now, because you start with what you have and what they know, while understanding that this is not ultimately where the neighborhood is and where we meet. So this is the contextualization conversation. So the reason I'm saying it's a tension is because we need to be introducing. I ask people questions, things like, "Hey, what are the top 5 church songs you grew up with in the Black church?" We just need what hymns. So we have some commonality here that we can build towards. These are the conversations we're having. The piano player, I'm so thankful for him, just for some of his church background and ability to play in a more gospel-like way. And so I've given him free reign over the offertory music. I'm just like, just play something that's more reflective of the neighborhood. Spotify checklist or a playlist. I'm not the tech guy, but I entrusted that to African Americans. I said, listen, make it and mix it up. And so we have everything from Christian hip hop to classic gospel to choir music. And I've had multiple comments in the lobby of just like, man, nobody plays that before service. I'm like, hey, listen, it's all good, right? There's freedom here. And so that's been a really good thing. So we're learning. I mean, we don't know what we don't know. We don't reflect right now the neighborhood's worship culture. Other than to say, like, we just had this conversation in worship. If we're going to start choosing songs, we're not choosing them because we know how to play them. We're choosing them because that's the direction we want to go. And so we need to be thinking outside that.
But at the same time, the Black church is a lot of showcase too, so you need to balance that too. You're not wanting to cater so much to the culture that you're breaking down some of that.
That was a tension we had early on too, is that I didn't realize, at least in our area, that musicians are used to being paid weekly. Every piece of the Black church ensemble, whether it's choir member, drummer, and so I'm like,
I just learned that last week myself.
and so what I'm learning though really is that many of the worship leaders in our city it's a gig. So they'll play a Saturday gig, a couple Sunday morning gigs, walk out with a few $1,000s and not work during the week until I see you next weekend. I'm running away from that like as fast and as hard as I can. We're not gonna be doing
Speak
that.
a little bit to the prayer time and how the
Yeah, so
other refugees have really taught us a lot and how we've
So yeah,
emphasized
one of the things we maybe look a little different is part of our service. We do about 7 or 10 minutes of kind of like pastoral led prayer, breakout, and praying in service for everything from right when you have a multi-ethnic church, international things are local things, right? And so you can pray about those kind of things. Or we can pray about missionaries. We can pray about. We just sent 2 to New York City, and they came back and gave her a report. But again, as part of that, don't want to see that pillar crumble. Like we got to teach people to pray. Like my wife has been really good at reminding me in our little Bible studies that we have with kids and youth, probably up to even early 20s, it's just you can't assume somebody knows what you mean. Like what is prayer? Who are we talking to? Oh, we're talking to God. What are we talking to him about? And it's just been constantly these instructional moments and forcing yourselves to wrestle down complexity and simplicity, right? That's going to be my preaching lesson is just constantly use simple terms. And so extended period of prayer we have. Preaching 30 minutes is where I'm at right now.
and
enjoy that,
sticking
think
with
that
the
is-
book, because remember how the topical thing was.
one of the things we found, as I've shared the vision across the neighborhood, was like, wait a minute, we're gonna work through one another. Like, you're not gonna preach multiple messages in a day. So many of our churches are probably 3, 4, 5 hour church services. And so you have Genesis, Ezekiel, and 1 John in the same day because the pastor got a word. And this has been like, wow, we're studying a book together. So that preaching culture, totally foreign, for sure. That's totally foreign to our culture and of our city. But other than that, I guess it would look pretty similar. We're doing 1 song, a welcome, 3 songs, announcements, prayer, offering, message, closing song. You are loved. You guys do that around here? You love people?
One of our worship leaders is African American. He said the ultimate compliment for a preacher is to get a shoe thrown at you. That's like big.
That's it.
They'll take a shoe and like beat you. Like, go, Pastor! What are you doing, Pastor? Remember that, Doug?
Did you get it?
He hasn't yet.
Oh, it's all street cred, man. I got it for spoken word poetry, so that's like a little side hobby of mine.
You got a
Cool
shoe
shit,
thrown at you?
Oh yeah, see?
Farther ahead than I.
Yeah, it's that tongue.
I threw a shoe at our worship leader one Sunday. Well, it was before
For different
service,
reasons.
but yeah, no. He was laying out the gospel, and so I threw my shoe at him. Everybody was looking at me like, "What are you doing?"
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
So I got a question for you. So you getting involved, and how are you, as of now, looking to reach, especially cultures from, you said Iraqis. And,
Yeah.
I have a heart for Iraqis because I was in the Marines and served in Iraq for 3 tours. And so, what does that look like in that aspect?
So, one of the reasons we want, and this is like counter church plant wisdom, you never launch a church in the summertime. Every pastor that I talked to 2, 3, 4 pastors were like, you don't miss the summer. Because summer, for us, is high time. Because people can walk to church. You get to wintertime, they're not driving. And so your Christmas service, just guard your heart, man. It's going to be like, boom. I'm like, okay, all right, I get it. And so we launched June for that reason. July was all of our outreach, a big push, because we're also semi-year-round schooling. School launched August 3rd by us. And so July we did 3 things. We did the Backyard Bible Club, which was 4 weeks long in that Section 8 complex. Most unique thing we've had to date, and honestly, parents stayed. We had multiple Iraqis that are sitting there listening. 2 of them now, see, I'm going to ask you theologically, we're in a little conversation here. We have the guys going, hey, Jesus showed up to me in a dream. I have questions. Okay, I'm missions pastor. That's what I've done for 9 years. You read about this stuff. You're like, okay, this isn't special revelation. You're not saved. But man, I'd love to explain. What did you see of Jesus, right? So we're getting these opportunities. I got to hunt down some of these families because they are transient. But they stayed and they watched. And our whole thing was creation, fall, rescue, restoration. That was the 4 weeks of just kind of covering Genesis to Revelation. Second thing we did was soccer. That was the 40 kids. Halftime was both testimony time of the coaches as well as a lesson. We did superheroes, right? Superheroes say yes to the mission. Superheroes live for a better tomorrow. We just kind of wrapped all that into that. And then the final thing we did was the barbecue.
But I was going to say that there are a couple of,
A number of Iraqis.
lots of Iraqis, but there were a couple that chose specifically, or asked specifically, can we still play and not listen to your devotional?
Can we sit?
And we said, sure, but it's interesting because throughout the week they got closer and closer.
So multiple coaches said, Doug, did you see how they went from 100 feet to 50 feet, 25 feet to eating the snack, right?
And I had some great conversations with 2 of the moms of a couple of the kids and stuff, so.
And the last thing we
It's
did was
just
the
a time
barbecue, and so that one, so you're getting the questions about the diet, right? It's like, listen, I'm not here to lie to you. Like, you can't eat anything off that grill. Well, what did they do? They ate the chips and the watermelon and the cookies, and they stayed. And then we had probably 20 Iraqis sitting. I'm like, oh my goodness. Burqa ladies eating Doritos.
The friend from Pakistan that called his friend on the phone and had Doug FaceTime with him. This is my friend, and he's the only other believer that I know, but he is in Pakistan and all this stuff. And Doug's like,
So
what?
you're a Muslim calling a believer in Pakistan.
But that was the
Yeah.
commonality that he saw was,
beginning of a bad
I
joke.
do have a friend that's a Christian. He's in Pakistan, but can you talk to him?
Yeah, so lots of just
Okay.
interesting things that way. So as far as ongoingly, I mean, I literally had the conversation. There's one is it Afghani? How do you say it? It would be Afghani. It would be the
Yeah.
ethnicity. Okay, one
Yeah.
Afghani man works at the Section 8 complex. He slaughters his own meat. So that's one thing that's happening in our city that's really unique, is you can hear goats being slaughtered in garages. And but I said to him,
Don't worry, the Burmese are
No,
even more
stop.
interesting because they catch the squirrels right off
They
the
catch
fence
the
and then they
squirrels,
kill them and eat them.
I'm not
So,
even
you
kidding.
know,
It's crazy.
there's all sorts of weird things going on to us,
Nice.
but
It's
it's very
so
common
great.
to them.
Sounds
But-
like hillbilly West Virginia.
Yeah,
I was gonna say it's either a mix of this rural culture or international, one of the two. But I literally talked to him about, like, would there be an opportunity where you could prepare alongside so we can get everybody together and everybody feels like they can share a meal together. And he's totally open to that idea. I was like,
That's
I'll
cool.
come. I'll watch you slaughter, I guess, if that's like a bonding thing. But in any case, those kind of ways where you're just kind of doing it alongside of each other. I think it's going to be a slow thing. No secret, these places are popping up near universities. So we have a mosque right near Augustana College for us and the Black Hawk Community College. The other one is 5 minutes from Davenport, is a huge Islamic center that's popping up near some community colleges as well. So anyway, this is fascinating. Yeah, so ongoing, man, it's going to be the school with the kids. It's going to be hopefully some ESL efforts. We have 4 people who have ESL even credentials. One of the
From
school
our core
EL teachers from our core team. So I feel like that's something that we're just going to, okay, like how are we going to do this? What does this look like? And I think that's going to provide some of the opportunities.
Awesome.
We're reading Dreams and Vision as a church right now. George's wife has led a few people to Christ in that vision as well. Jesus. So,
Who's that by?
Tom Doyle.
Doyle.
Okay. Good book.
Yeah, it's accounts of Muslim background believers who, well, I don't even remember now if all of them have become
That's
believers
the
at the time of the writing, but most of them are composites. They're not,
Yeah,
you know, he has to protect their identities in some cases, but he has
to pick that up.
ones from Saudi Arabia and Syria and Iraq, but all the dreams tend to have similar components. Like Jesus is usually dressed in white, and they don't normally see his face, but they sense a peace and love in his presence that they've never sensed before. And
We had a Turkish lady, border of Syria. She lost her husband 9 years ago, and her son's name was Isa.
But it
She was
like
one of them, and it was an adopted son. Because her, anyway.
this-
You're like, oh, isn't that funny? You know what his name means, right? Like, I have Muslims in my family from Indonesia, and so it's just, yeah, we'll see what the Lord does. It just is, I'll pick that one up, because I've never heard it straight to my face 3 times in a month, and you're like, okay, clearly he's doing something.
It's good. He walks through some of the theological complexity of that and makes a good case for it.
Okay.
I thought so.
Sound. I trust you on soundness, that's what I'm asking.
Yeah. I mean, there's some things there. I have more questions probably after reading it now.
That's good. Inquiring minds want to know. What else? That's a good question.
Get your hands full, man.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons we're coming to churches, right? So this is one of those, I will tell you, this has been a category that, quite frankly, the Southern Baptists introduced us to. You should build a team of supporting churches. Here's some of the thoughts. I mean, just generally, you guys are in close enough proximity that mission trips become a real deal. I hosted them multiple times in Davenport, from Colorado, and all over the place. But I love the sound of partnership. Not just transactional relationship, but in a way that gives folks access to things that they might not otherwise see. I was telling Chris, and I said, Market Streets can become part of my presentation. I'm driving down here going like, man, we do urban plunge. We just started this last year, and I'm sitting here, like, how do you jump into your own city to see it through eyes that you might not normally see? And sometimes it's helpful just to get a couple hours away and say, hey, look what God's doing. And we kind of theme those kind of things that are under listen, learn, serve, return. How can we help? Whether it's students or adults, to hear voices they might not otherwise hear, learn lessons they might not otherwise have time to learn or taken the time to learn, certainly serve, but then return in a way that their worldview's been challenged to the local church that God's called them to be a part of. And so I look at those opportunities and ways to just shoulder the work together. Our hands are full. Got to go slow, right? That's we're working on that. Of just okay, what does this look like? But thankful after 7 years now to be a resident and to be planted there.
And there's a lot of need and a lot of opportunity, but the key is focus, I think, and just really knowing what you are and who you are and what you can handle at that time, and being able to say no, not yet, or, and just really, walk methodically, but in a direction that, is, that you're really feeling pulled by the Lord.
It's sharing your heart too. I guess I know you a little bit too, Doug. You love that complexity of contextualization and the opportunities. And, I guess I wonder how, a lot of pastoring too is like administrative stuff and, preaching is, I don't know how long it takes you, but for me it takes 15 hours a week. So, yeah, maybe you just speak to how
How are my weaknesses being exploited?
Oh, I can speak to that. No, I'm just kidding.
I'm just kidding.
Just say how to maintain focus on
Yeah.
the local church dynamic and giving help to your parishioners when you're thinking evangelistically and
Yeah.
opportunity, but then now you have this little group
Sheep.
of sheep that are gathered and
Yeah.
discipling is work intensive for
Yeah.
every one of those sheep. So probably more than it is for a Decatur resident or a Davenport resident.
Yeah, so one of the things, no secret, going from a church of about 1,500 people or so in a multi-staff context to this, been a pretty huge difference, right? There's ways that you unlearn the way you did ministry because you just had this at your fingertips. I'm saying that because we're very much in the middle of the, I can't do it that way anymore. Like, that's not going to work. And so, that being said, for lack of better terms, keeping my butt in the chair and preaching is so important. Like for us administratively, like my mornings are the times that I'm after. I usually try to push through till a later lunch so I have a good block. 15 hours is my number. I just like taking that time out. I also don't feel like I can take much longer than that because I'd be disregarding some of the other things that are also pressing right now in terms of administration and caring for the sheep. Certainly the work right now is going to be, I hate hearing this. Yesterday we had a debrief with our whole team after service. One of the things that came over, we did kind of do the right, wrong, missing, confusing after 2 months. Right, in the wrong category, pops up 3 times, get more stuff off Doug's plate. Okay, so you're just staring your weakness in the face going like, okay, they're seeing it. Careful, right? Raise them up and give it, and they want responsibility, right? And so you're sitting here going, well, some of that's going to be the ability to involve others in the work of ministry in order to multiply yourself. I will say, we found life in the ability to, even in the work, using our home is a huge asset for us, so that I don't have to be away all the time. Personal ministry is we have Bible study every morning at 7:30 with 10 or 15 kids. We do basketball and Bible study. They're all shooting, playing knockout, and we do Bible study. Those kind of things when neighbors can walk over. We had a domestic violence situation 2 weeks ago, and she finally came over and just said, I've been waiting to come pray for a long, long time. Will you please pray for me? I just say that because I just feel like it's life-giving for us because our gifts match really well. She receives people home really, really well. And then we can be there. She can watch and we can send the kids upstairs. All that stuff makes it feel more sustainable when you're just like, hey.
There's a lot of
We're
home
together.
visits that have to be done, though, because the communication is just really different. Like if you're not face to face with somebody, the phone numbers change constantly. They're being evicted all the
Addresses
time.
change
So
constantly.
it's not that they're moving outside of the community; they're just moving different streets or, and there's just something lost without the face to face. So there's a lot of home visits that come from people that are starting to attend and things like that, trying to figure out what context they're in, and you can find out a ton just by knocking on their door and getting them to come. But there's also a lot of variation in work schedule. if they're working, then a lot of times they're working a shift, and it's not always days, it's usually second
A lot
or
of
third
nighttime
shift.
ministry.
And so during the days, you can catch them a lot of times, it just depends what time of day and that kind of thing. So there's a lot of that. But the balance right now that I feel like we're struggling in is more how to get the core team to continue to bond and cohese and at the same time minister to, so we have like two groups that we're kind of needing to mesh, but needing to minister to also like that leadership team and which I think is in any church and the congregation, but trying to get them to interact and not have it just on Doug, so there's just this kind of weird thing that's going on right now, but because we don't have great strong leaders that are in the neighborhood. There's only like probably 2 families that are right in the neighborhood with us right now, so it's just kind of.
So that's one of the
Trying to
commitments we made
build
the core team make, is we recognize if you don't live here, you need to commit to giving of your time and energies here. We're focused on these 3 neighborhoods. We want you to bear fruit in your workplace, great. Bear fruit in your neighborhood, great. We should bear fruit here. And so that means, man, if we have midweek stuff, we want you here. If we have,
Which
and
we've
so
done
that's-
for our nights on
and so
Wednesdays
they've-
consistently and stuff. There is a good willingness and commitment. It's just trying to figure out that balance and that.
they're still
mix.
getting to know the neighborhood, have a heart
Some
for
of
it.
them are. Some of them know it well, but.
What's your small group ministry? I assume it hadn't started yet. What's that gonna look like? How's it gonna be different?
So I actually was just on the, I have a phone call coming with Ken Stein next week, so Chicago West, one of the urban plants in the fellowship. They definitely said, they're like, well, what we wish we didn't launch with small groups. I said, talk to me about that, what's the deal? He goes, honestly, some of it was just getting lost in the name, that it's not culture, 'cause small groups is not a thing, like people don't do that. But they do midweek Bible studies. And so I'm talking with him this week, because I said, okay, well, how are you imparting, the way we envision it is kind of if it's an all church or as many as can come possible, Bible study with a table group dynamic where you're starting to sow the seeds of accountability and that kind of thing, to start to feel out that family dynamic. Home-based stuff, not gonna work by our account. Our neighbors have all been in our house multiple times, very, very rarely over 3
It
years.
doesn't work in Africa.
Yeah, you just don't, whether it's a shame thing, because they don't want you, like for us, there's hoarding that goes on. It's like, oh, we don't want you to see our house, or whether it's we just don't feel like we have adequate space to do these things.
But
And
there's
so,
also a very hospitable culture there. It's just, it's kind of depends on what pocket of people you're talking about, because.
like Africans just want house, like Africans by us, don't make an appointment, just show up. And they'll have you in, and there'll be tea, and there'll be food, but to schedule something, it's just a different, and African Americans, the wall's been high. For us, Burmese would be pretty high, yeah.
So if you you're thinking like within the community center will be the way small group
Mhm.
ministry work?
Either that or like the community, so this Section 8 complex has a community room. They talked about even giving us a key as a church, where that would be right in the middle of 1,200 people. And it's 500 feet from your door, so those kind of things. Third spaces for sure, some kind of common space that we could host a number of people, and then do kind of break out, just introduce that culture.
The only small group that we've really got is the high school Bible study that's been going for a few years
Yeah.
on Thursday nights.
So the first guys I started soccer with, this is their senior year of college.
But it's
Oh, not
more
in
than
college,
soccer,
of high
it's
school. Yeah, no, I know, but some of those first round guys are the ones that have come and just been neat. Because you never know what fruit you're bearing in an event like that. So that was.
But in
just neat.
that case, he's raised up some of the guys that can take on leadership,
There's 2
for
guys that
that,
need
so.
that. They just hosted at our house because of proximity.
or had in the past. I don't know.
So they got saved through your soccer ministry, or you're just connected?
They're still asking a whole lot of questions. I think some of them are believers. I mean, we're just keep getting clarity, going like, all right, guys, like, is this getting through? Like, you understand what we're saying? And I mean, we just keep. 3 of them are headed off to college this week. They each got a Bible. They got a pouch for next to their bed, so the Bible's right there, and a lamp. I said, you got no excuse, right? My son, who's 7, says you can be lazy and still read it. I'm like, way to market to the college kids, Xander, you're killing it, right? So I mean, we're just keep planting that because it's not that they're not going to church. There's a church attending African culture. We have. I was just with a kid today, St. James Lutheran, right? Had transgender pastor. You're just like. I told the whole sleepover that one time. I was going to that church. We had a bunch of guys coming over for guys' night. What?
It's a black church?
No, but I would say they're probably drawing some African kind of more mainline families to that, kind of like
It's
Two
because
Rivers
of-
United Methodist has a huge
It's, I
African
think initially
population.
because they're feeling like they need to owe the white Mizzou, what do you call it?
Mzungus.
Mzungus. But that's our white, the white people, the white man. But because when they first were resettled here, the helps churches, you know, some of those
The mainline.
mainline churches are the ones that initially are
Raise
all
up the
about
teams and
coming alongside them, and so then there's this I owe you culturally, and so they're attending because they feel like they owe them something, kind of thing.
Okay, sure.
yeah.
So which mainline has a transgender pastor?
That was a Lutheran church, yeah. So we had to have the talk of, man, like, just don't go there. Let's
But
I
the problem
know
is
there's
then
somewhere
an
healthy. I
alliance
mean,
to
this one we
mom.
didn't have a job. We're like, go somewhere healthier.
But to a high school kid, a high school boy in particular, African one, there's an alliance to the mom, and if mom
If mom go
is
there,
feels like I have to repay these people, then
we're going.
that, you know, so there's.
We're dealing with that. We're not even with those Thursday guys. Like, oh, I want to come to your church. Trying to navigate that. It's like, I get it. Why don't we sit down with your mom? Let's have a meal. You know, just start at that level. It's just time. It's just commitment to slow. We've had to tell our team over and over, like, I don't know what your expectations are, but slow growth. You talk to the guys in inner city Chicago, they're like, if you're not in it for 35 years, don't start. Just don't start.
Wow.
I know. I mean, that's been multiple conversations from the city stuff, and you're like, because the problems are enormous. They're entirely over. We can't get after all that. Not even close. We're just going to be a faithful local church, and it's going to take some creativity and thinking through how do you sustain it to stay here, and all sorts of thoughts that way. But in any case, it's long haul. It's just long haul. Yeah.
Good. What time is it?
7:25.
Any other questions? Folks?
I assume you're elder-led.
Will be, right? I mean, so as a new church plant, so Harvest Davenport kind of
Yes,
functions
yeah.
that coaching capacity. And so John Cochran would be kind of that direct leadership role that way. And we talk every week on a coaching
You
call.
talked about some financial expectations from Davenport. Do they have expectations for your church about being self-governing, elder-led?
Yes, that was the big difference about why not a campus was, man, this city needs local, healthy leaders and all over that. That's, planting, that's where we're headed. Praying for those men that God's gonna reveal who that is.
Anything else? Thank y'all for coming.
Hey.
Appreciate this.
Are there other churches supporting your work so far?
So right now, Harvest Chattanooga.
Okay.
So you mentioned Davenport had a couple of church plants. Chattanooga is one of those that's been a long-standing friendship with Mike and Jamie DuBard. So they've supported us on a monthly basis. We've had others do some one-time things with they felt like they could serve. We've even had a church. We're using Planning Center for our database, and I was like, I know nothing, so can you train some of our team to use that? So Harvest in Monmouth came over to help do some training because they're really good at that. And so this comes some creative ways. I do have a meeting with Harvest Vincennes and their elders, Ryan Lowry over there. Again,
Local churches, Edgewood Baptist has, like for their children's leadership and then their recovery ministry, like.
yeah,
been
so we have a
supported in
local
different way.
Baptist church that is probably healthiest in our community. They found creative ways, whether it's speaking events, their children's ministry, man, totally resourced us just with stuff that they were like, hey, we don't need this anymore, you could benefit from this. They have a very, very healthy, like, city recognized Celebrate Recovery, very large, like the police has been all behind it. We're talking about things like, are there ways, should we be doing some kind of chapter, if you will, because we have proximity. I never know with an addict if close proximity is a bad thing, or if you actually need to go up the hill, because that's bad, like, we're just talking through those things, like, we would totally send some table leaders and kind of do the apprenticeship thing, and like, would love to see those kind of things, which is, our neighborhood needs that. And so, again, all sorts of different creative ways. I'll be talking to some other churches. Really, it's been the ones I've talked to are the closest in proximity and friendship. I mean, it started with ordination guys, and then they're friends. I was thankful to just kind of pick people and going like, hey, I've been a minister, I've watched God work, and so, yeah, I don't know, yeah,
The
long-standing
guys that
partnership.
grilled you at ordination.
What?
The guys that grilled you at ordination.
I still like you. I don't know why. That was the hardest day of my life. No, it in any case, yeah, for sure. I mean, those guys are all close and want to see it go. Just kind of feeling this out, what this all looks like. So, yeah.
Assumption. Let's assume we made a 1-year commitment to your ministry as a church. What kind of communication could we expect as far as, how things progressing? Those. I mean, is there something in place already, or is it?
Well, I would say, like, for instance, what I kind of report on the coaching front's a little intense. That's a weekly, like, hey, we want to see your numbers. We want to see where this is going. Certainly, we can produce those things. We're tracking those things. If you want to see that, I guess, and we've talked about this with Davenport, numbers can be deceiving where we are.
Right.
Just even with our core team, I'm saying, wait, we had 3 new neighborhood families. I'm over the moon about that. Like 3 families, but yeah, I know, I get it, but they're from the neighborhood. Like that's awesome. And so, other than that, so we've done a newsletter. So with these support raising letter, for instance, we're planning on doing some kind of like quarterly update that way. If you want more frequently, there's always stories to tell, right? It's
Yeah.
just a matter of like what's important, like what do you want to hear? What are we excited about? Have we got multi-ethnic worship? Well, here's one step we made toward that, right? We're trying. So in any case, I think it would be a matter of, no, we don't have a current tool other than an update that we're planning on sending quarterly, and my weekly report that I'm giving to coach. So we could do something in between that to give more details. That would be.
Yeah, I was just curious. I mean, it's always good to know what some of the things you guys are being blessed with, praises. It's also good to know what some of the needs are.
Yeah.
And as you progress as a church, you're going to experience more needs,
Yeah.
or needs you didn't expect.
Yeah.
And to be aware of that would be something our mission team would be certainly would want to be praying over and be interested in and knowing.
We had kind of a last minute provision even this last week. The coach of the Judson University women's volleyball team gives me a call because she's the daughter of Rob Willie. Julia calls and says, the coach, so Julia is now the head coach of the Judson volleyball team. I know.
How old is Rob?
You ask him that. I think he just turned 50. In any case, she called. She said, I got 16 girls. Some plans fell through for the weekend. Do you have opportunities we can serve? And just so happens we had some things come up at the community center where we meet. I said, actually, you can be a massive asset to us and do a multi-hour deep clean of this building. They've had 150 kids per day in this building over the course of the summer. Kind of takes a beating. And just, I say that because timely need, timely provision, and God did, and they did some phenomenal, we actually had 4 lots. These are some of the God stories. I know, we got the rest of the meeting. Just one more God story. Deep in the middle of training last fall, I got a phone call on my voicemail. It says, Doug, you don't know who I am, but I know who you are. Give me a call. Really weird voicemail.
It's the FBI.
How about that? Right? This could go really wrong, right? It's IRS, FBI, right? You're going through it. In any case, turns out this guy is the former owner of the Section 8 complex and a number of government housing projects, not only in our city, but around the country. His name is Bob Rowland. And I said, hey, Bob, what's going on? He goes, well, I'm selling Century Woods, and I'm not sure how your relationship is going to look moving into the future, if they're going to be friendly towards you, or if all that stuff. He goes, I've been watching for 7 years. You guys have had, and he names the events. I've never met him before. He goes, I want to make sure that you can still do ministry. So, I own land right across the street from the Section 8 complex. Sorry. Thank you. Should your wife do that for you when you're preaching? Because I've had a couple of those already.
No.
Remakes.
that's good.
It has to be a pink water bottle though, so
Nice.
you know.
This is what she hands me too. I'm like, well, if this, it's humbling. He goes, I have 4 lots, and I'd like to give them this before we're even formed as a nonprofit corporation.
Or as you were trying.
As we're trying, like in the midst of it, I was like, we'd like to donate this land so you can still do ministry here. And I'm saying, like, who are you? So I got questions, right? So his last name is Rowling, and I don't know if you know, Harvest Rolling Meadows is on Rowling Road.
Yeah.
I said, Bob, just curiosity. You said from Chicagoland area, Rowling Road. He goes, that's named for my grandfather. He goes, I attended Harvest for 10 years.
Oh,
I said, how do you even know? Graduated from Lake Zurich High School, my high school in 1968, right? God has a funny way of knitting these things together. So here we are. Last week, Judson University volleyball team cleans up one of these lots to hopefully create a space where we can make people just gather. Just another gathering spot in the middle. It's just land. But land in an urban environment, it's like a monopoly board, right? You want your Broadway, you want your park, but we still don't have Broadway. You know where I'm thinking, right? There's this spot. Not there yet, it's owned by the school district. It's okay. We need a different school there, right? There are different things like that. There's just some community development things. But in any case, it's amazing. We're watching him provide. Whether we know we need it or not, it's a different question. Some of these things have been really so.
cool. Tell Rob Willie's daughter to come clean our church.
Yeah,
Hey.
right?
I'll tell her, hey, next team bonding moment, Decatur. They have this lake. I've got to market that lake a little bit better. I'm just saying. I never knew in the middle of the seas of corn that there was a beautiful lake.
Second time I've heard that.
I think corn's, yeah, come on, I grew up in Illinois. Come on. I think it's beautiful. So we're good.
I do got one last question,
Yeah, you're good.
and this
Back up.
is personal.
Scott.
Bullet holes.
Yeah.
Similar experience. My wife and I, we lived in an apartment here in Decatur. We moved out because we no longer had space for our family in the apartment. But it got shot. The windows got shot out the next week, right where our kids' front room window. And I vowed to my wife I'd never do that again. But
Yeah.
I don't think that's a fair vow. And how do you handle that?
Yeah, it's tears. Right? I mean, there's been no shortage of that, guys. There's a lot that hurts. We had a murder 2 summers ago right out in the street. Right? And you watch God provide in ways I've not really ever known what it is to ask God for protection, right? Like, you know more about that than I do. I can tell you as a soldier, right? You just know about these things. And my former neighbor used to be the chief of police, right? And early on I was calling him. I'm like, okay, I just heard something. Am I supposed to stand up, go to the window, hit the ground, or go back to bed and make a phone? Like, what am I supposed to do? The only gunshots I ever heard were at gun club, right, growing up. And so, I'll tell you some of the hardest voices early on, especially, I'm sure you have really, really nice church people here, but I would get laid flat in the lobby at the church about how irresponsible I was being as a dad and as a husband to my wife for making this decision. Brutal. And you can't yell in the lobby, right? And especially as a pastor, you're like, what? And it was so hard. And, not very many people know about this instance. My own parents don't even know that this happened. My son just found the bullet hole last week, and he was showing friends just 2 days ago, pointing. He didn't know what it is. He just found a hole. It's what we're working on. We're hiding them.
They're very aware of gunshots because they happen.
They hear them all
You
the
hear them a lot, but just not. They weren't aware that they went through the house because some of the things you just need to protect them from. They're 5 and 7. They don't know how to comprehend or understand.
But like the stolen car, they slept. The loudest thing in my life was a car coming at 60 miles an hour into a retaining wall in my front. They slept through the whole thing, and sirens, and you're like, okay, you don't even sleep when it's a nice night. What's the right? You just watch it ways. So you're like, okay, it's amazing, but man,
Prayer and trust.
if it wasn't God just keeping us there, just having this we feel more at peace living here than I did where we did before. Like, it's like, no, this is it. We don't have to be cavalier. We don't have to be stupid. We don't have to hang out in places at night that we just really shouldn't be at this point in time, or certainly not as a family.
And
But-
just knowing that there is going to be some kind of suffering element. There is going to be some kind of you know, test of for us of God's character. You know He's good. Well, Satan's going to
Just
try and
to
prove
live
it different,
Right.
you know, and how is He really good? You know, and even in this circumstance, and it's really faith building, and very much so. I mean, I thought my faith was pretty strong before we moved there, and now it's just being.
We just have a
Tested on
conviction
a
that
whole
it should
different level.
cost us something.
But
Not that we seek,
in
not that we seek whatever. It's not self just, oh, come on, this would really hurt. It's not a gospel of poverty. It's just,
and not
Man.
in a comparison way either, because I
No.
think that each person lives this in a different way. You don't have to move
Costs you
to
something
someplace
different.
with bullets to say that you're living for Christ. You know, that's not the point. So.
and I have that behind me. Or if she wasn't on the same page, man, come on.
It took me a while.
And it
to
took
get
a
to-
while. It took a while.
I think I would have. In my heart, I want to move across the world more than I wanted to move to Rock Island.
We candidated for Malaysia,
Because of
2014.
there's stereotypes I think that I have even still, but that God really needed to break down. But there's just judgment and self-righteousness and some things that just moving across the river into the ghetto, has really God's working on me always. But
Well, if it was up to me, I wouldn't have chose you two to go,
mhm,
and so I think in that, seeing God work that way, I think will definitely help you, sticking it out in that community.
mhm,
I go to, I work cable, so I'm in a lot of houses and
sure.
ghettos and stuff like that. And it's just-
Everyone wants cable, man.
Oh yeah, yeah, right.
We got
Right.
right? The neighborhood
Yeah.
has cable.
And it's amazing to me, the kids that just want to be near you.
Mhm,
And you go to a white hat in the house and they're playing on their Xbox and,
mhm,
just and want to be there.
mhm,
And so I think that, your willingness to stick it and be there is
mhm.
really amazing. But now I wouldn't have chose you too.
Early on, it was a conversation with the elders to say, we need to plant a church here. Let's identify a minority man to be the pastor, and I would love to play the second chair. This went on for over a year. Praying, actually pursued a guy pretty heavily. And it took my African American friends to look me in the eye and be like, you recognize that to us your skin color doesn't matter. As long as you love us, and if you're going to shepherd us, all that, you're going to care when it hurts.
Yeah.
You're our pastor. I had to hear that. Because I believe everything that you're saying. Man, I was like, listen, my missiology would say the local leader. I can't ever really be a local. Just by moving doesn't make me a local. Over time, they're my neighbors. I live in the neighborhood. I am a resident, right? But, man, it was good to hear them say that and also recognize now that every face needs to look more like the neighborhood than mine. In terms of frontward-facing leadership, as much as we can lift that up, just for the sake of being winsome, we want to see that happen.
I think a confirmation of just that God has given us in this little snippets of all sorts of things, but there's that one neighbor right next door who honestly sees more than she needs to see of our life, just between yelling at kids that are doing who knows what on outside or inside or what
Neighbors are close
our-
where we are.
our
Like,
dogs
you can touch
that-
the other house.
our dogs that constantly are out, and she's calling and being like, I think your dog's out again, or just all sorts of things. But she's faithfully come to church, and not out of a loyalty thing, but out of a true desire to learn more about the Bible. And it's just neat to see. And she's black, so she and just kind of that. I don't know. Again, just that interesting kind of dynamic that God gives of. If you really shepherd my people, then, so, I don't know, just kind of neat.
Can we pray for y'all?
Absolutely.
You plan to head back tonight?
Yeah, hey, little road trip.
Okay. If you don't mind, just gather around and put my hands on Rowland. Lord, we're really excited to hear what you're doing in Rock Island. The calling, Lord, of Doug and Kristen, their kids, Lord. Just want to pray right now and ask for your favor on them, Lord, as they encouragement it's been to me personally, to us as a group, to hear their heart for you and for the nations and for people of different color. Thank you, Lord, that you've already planted this church. You're in the process, Lord, of raising up leaders. Pray, Lord, that you would just continue to meet their financial needs, that you would indeed, Lord, protect their family and allow them to even, Lord, bring changes through the church to the community that they're in, Lord. We know that churches, healthy churches, have a transformative effect upon communities, and they're good for the communities. And so we pray that this will be true for Rock Island and for Rock Island Bible, Lord. So, yeah, Lord, and I just pray for the practical things that we talked about today, just time limits and just working, Lord, to figure out the financial side of things. And, Doug, Lord, learning how to minister in this community. And yeah, God, just pray that you would meet those needs each day. As Doug and Kristen fall on their faces before you and ask for your help, that you would grow their maturity and strength and capability to minister, and give them effectiveness, reaching out, Lord, to the African American community in particular, to the refugees, Lord, who desperately need gospel witness. Yeah. We pray for a safe journey home as well. George, you want to pray? Why don't you just close us?
Father God, we do thank you for this time and for what we've been able to learn, and how we've been encouraged by what Doug and Kristen are pursuing in Rock Island. We do pray that you continue to build up this church, build up the relationships in the neighborhoods, and make this church a blessing to these three neighborhoods in particular that they're focused on. And, give them wisdom as they navigate through how to do small groups, how to do worship, how to do preaching, and how to make their values and pillars appropriate for the cultural context they're in. Give them grace as they stumble through that, and show favor on them, I pray. Thank you for how you've shown favor on them over the last few months and in the weeks since they've launched, and providing the community center for them, and providing the land. And I pray that you use those things to bear great fruit in the future, and show us how we can best support them too. That we are their partners in your church. We are members of the same larger body, so help us to celebrate with them when they have cause for celebration, and to mourn with them when they have reason to mourn. And Lord, continue to grow your kingdom, we pray. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Very much. How often does this crew meet?
Most Mondays.
Most Mondays. That's good.
We don't usually have snacks though, so it's
Special treat.